Hi, everybody. Some areas are starting to get back to a little bit of normal. We're seeing stores reopening. Adrian Kingsley-Hughes with me here now to talk specifically about Apple starting to open up some of their stores in different parts of the U.S. You can talk abroad as well. Adrian, Apple, one of the first major retailers to actually shut things down back in March, correct?
Apple was very fast to shut things down in response to coronavirus. It closed 460 of its stores, retail stores, basically everything that it had outside of Greater China on March the 13th. And it was going to revisit that idea back at the end of March, but now we're in May. But slowly, Apple is starting to reopen. Last month, we saw its stores in South Korea open. This month, we've seen stores starting to reopen in places like Austria, Australia, even Germany, which is interesting, and also the States. Apple has started phasing in opening in states like South Carolina, Alabama, Alaska, and it's interesting to see how Apple is starting to kind of come back to life in terms of retail. But there's an awful lot of questions about it. First is it's introducing a lot of friction in terms of getting into the stores. People aren't just going to be able to just wander off the streets into stores. There's going to be temperature checks. Apple has said there'll be masks for people who want masks. They're reducing store opening hours. And they're also going to be reducing the number of people who can get into the stores. So it's not just going to be the kind of turn up off the streets sort of affair that it once was.
Yeah, so definitely not business as usual, but a little glimmer of what we were used to. It's funny because about 5 minutes from my house is the mall, and there's an Apple store that they just renovated. I mean, they had the grand reopening in February, and I think I went in there one time, and it's this beautiful store. And so to drive by it and see it sitting there, and people really haven't been able to enjoy it yet, it makes me think about, well, what is it going to look like when we do get to go back into there, how things will be different. And I think what's interesting, we were just talking before we did this segment, Adrian, about how the question remains is, do we have to go into a store? Well, I'm sure there's sometimes we do, but they've also given us Apple really providing ways that people can get things taken care of too without having to go into an actual store.
It's interesting to think how much revenue Apple stores actually generate. Apple doesn't tell us, but analysts generally suggest it's about 10%. So it's not a huge amount. Apple stores are more places where people go for the Apple experience. They get to fiddle with new things. They get to play with new things. It's a place where traditionally a lot of first-time Apple buyers go. It's a place to go get support when things go wrong. And in some ways, it is a great place for people to be able to handle stuff. And the Apple experience is quite unique in terms of technology. Many people have tried to copy it, but really they've not managed to kind of make it feel just like the Apple Store. But Apple is now slowly moving on to a new thing where they say everything you love about our stores is online. And I think it's hard to look at that and not say Apple is really changing how it wants to interact with customers. And it's possible that if Apple stores only account for maybe 10% of revenue, that really keeping all of them open may not be something that Apple wants to do for the long term. And it certainly has changed its way of doing business. I'm no doubt that in big cities, Apple stores will remain open because it's good for business. But more and more, I see them encouraging people to buy online, to do their support online, and also just they're giving experiences like using AR for seeing what products look like if you pop a Mac on your desk or something. Less and less it's about going into a store to handle something, and more it's about being able to place an order and getting that delivered next day.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of it's just what we're conditioned to and what we're going to have to learn to adapt to. We do like to go in the Apple stores. My kids love nothing more than putting their hands all over everything that's in there, which now is a kind of a scary or crazy thought to even think that we'll get to do that again. But in some ways, I think, and you mentioned this earlier, that Apple has somewhat been kind of an example or setting a tone for other major companies, retailers to look towards.
Well, definitely. Apple's push to being online is definitely a new shift, and the fact that it's now essentially moved pretty much all of its in-store experience online. suggests a big shift within the company. It was the first to close stores in the States, which again is indicative that it had its finger on the pulse in terms of problems. It's probably going to be very cautious in reopening. As you said, it's a place where people go and they want to pour everything. Well, do we really want to pour things that thousands of people have poured before? It's a good question. I think we're going to see a lot of changes. Apple putting WWDC online was an example of just how big that is. Rather than dump it, rather than shift it forward into some kind of into the future, but we don't know what the future is going to look like. Apple's taking this very bold step of saying people are going to want to do more stuff online. And it's odd that when Apple says this is what people want to do, it generally turns out to be what people want to do. And I think more and more companies need to look at that and say, maybe things are changing at a faster pace than we've thought of. And that online is really the future, and that people going to stores, people buying things physically, maybe is going to have people thinking, nah, I just rather have it delivered to my door. I don't want to go out.
Yeah, as simple as that is now, there's no doubt that's what we'll be doing a lot of. Adrian, well, if anything, it's all interesting just to see how it's unfolding and shaping our future. Even 6 months from now to see how this is all going to look. It's really going to be, interesting to see how it all falls out. But one quick thing before we take off here, I think it is interesting too. Like you said, they really haven't missed a beat in terms of putting out new products. Just 2 weeks ago we were talking about the newest iPhone model.
Yeah, we've had new iPhones, we've had new MacBooks. Apple's just been pushing products out, and while I think that there's a delay in there, I think it's giving that idea that Apple is okay. But then Apple has more money in terms of readily available cash than most banks do. This is a company that does not have a problem with cash, but it's also unique in being a very big company that turns very quickly around and starts to do things differently fast. Again, it's responded to coronavirus much faster than most companies have done. And the problem with that is that safe is going to mean friction when people go into stores. It's not going to be the old, easy experience. So instead, they're just putting that old, easy experience online. You click a few buttons and that's it. And I think that is going to change how Apple is in the next 6 months, the next year, and down the line.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, Adrian. Well, thanks for being here with me today. Of course, we have much more on Apple reopening their retail stores and what's to come on ZDNet. We hope you'll check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody.